morning. Welcome to the summary of the Spirituality and Leadership workshops. Spirituality and leadership are two of the pillars of our discernment. This video is a summary of the workshops. I have put most of the information on the screen. If you are interested in a topic, you can pause the video and read the screen or go to the respective workshop. In the first workshop, we experienced the cognitive dimension of our spirituality. In the workshop, we do an exercise to understand how our reflection, meditation, and contemplation build knowledge and wisdom, the driving forces of leadership. We will use the word contemplation to refer interchangeable to reflection, meditation, or contemplation. There are many ways to practice contemplation. For this first exercise, we will follow the advice of John Main, a Benedictine monk who was familiar with Hindu spirituality. John Main recommends the following. Sit down. Sit still with your back straight. Close your eyes lightly. Then, interiorly, silently begin to recite a single word, a prayer word or mantra. We recommend the ancient Christian prayer word Maranatha. Say it as 4 equal syllables. Breathe normally and give your full attention to the word as you say it, silently, gently, faithfully, and above all, simply. Maranatha means Lord, come in Aramaic. Lord, come into my life, come into my heart. Whatever your conception of God may be, even if you do not believe in God, you can rely on Maranatha, a mantra that helps you exercise your contemplation. Over time, you will see that it leads you to a life with more inner silence, more simplicity, less anxiety, more capacity to love, more integration into the community, more fulfillment, and more peace. Incorporating the practice of contemplation into our lives is revolutionary, as it reverses centuries during which our Western civilization has minimized the value of spirituality. Contemplation opens the door to the 10 dimensions of our spirituality that we will explore in the Spirituality and Leadership workshops. What is spirituality? It's a difficult question to answer because spirituality is invisible, but we can understand it from its effects on the different dimensions of our lives. The word spirit comes from Latin spirare, to breathe. Spirituality is like our breath. It is invisible, yet essential to the success of our lives. Notice how spirituality acts in our lives, even if we are not aware of it. It inspires us, enlightens us, energizes and strengthens us, instills values in us, fills our hearts, humanizes us, gives us peace, transforms us. Spirituality is crucial to every person's happiness. If you look at the column on the right, you may well identify with some of the vulnerabilities mentioned. Spirituality helps us to transform them. What's more, our spirituality builds leadership that maximizes the well-being of society, organizations, and nations. In fact, the discipline of leadership uses the same words as spirituality. Leaders inspire, energize, create values, transform. As you can see, our daily practice of contemplation strengthens our spirituality, transforms our lives, and builds leadership. And this brings us to a very important topic. The two epistemologies, the two mechanisms for constructing knowledge most widely used by modern science are empiricism and idealism. However, there is a third epistemology that is much richer, that is realism, enriched by phenomenology. Our contemplation reinforces our ability to perceive a huge variety of phenomena and integrate them enabling us to construct a richer, more human knowledge. Empiricism supports an individualistic culture and a right-wing political economy. Idealism supports a collectivist culture and a left-wing political economy. Realism and phenomenology, enriched by our capacity for contemplation, generate discernment, which gives rise to a culture of leadership that reduces confrontation between individualism and collectivism. A culture of discernment and leadership not only harmonizes and pacifies society, but also maximizes its well-being. In the second workshop, we experience how contemplation helps us discover the best of life, goodness, beauty, and truth, what Greek philosophers call transcendence. To enjoy transcendence, to build transcendence. This builds our ideals, which leads us on a path of life to build a better world, the driving force of leadership. The great spiritual traditions agree that contemplation leads us on a path toward a better reality. Christian spirituality gives contemplation a central role. The passage about the rich young man shows two types of morality. When Jesus Christ tells the rich young man to keep the commandments, he presents a morality based on rules. The young man replies that he has kept them since childhood. Then Jesus says to him, "If you want to be perfect, sell what you have and give it to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come and follow me." Jesus gives spirituality a central role. Perfection consists in following Jesus on his path to love. The second workshop invites us to experiential learning based on the spiritual canticle of St. John of the Cross, to experience how contemplation leads us on a path toward the love of God. St. John left us an extraordinary legacy in which he shares a kind of an X-ray of what happens inside us when we practice contemplation. It is incredible that he wrote this poem in subhuman conditions, in prison, dying. In the third workshop, we experience how our contemplation leads us to discover and build values, the heart of a culture of greatness and leadership, leaving behind the individualistic and collectivist cultures that have caused so much damage and division to humanity. Our contemplation leads us to build values. We value our transcendence and that of others. Values are engines of transformation. The third workshop invites us to engage in experiential learning. It presents 6 videos of leaders to reflect on how their values played a crucial role in building leadership cultures that change the world. In the fourth workshop, we experience how our contemplation helps us to live in God's presence and build our relationship with God, creating a better world. When we contemplate transcendence, we may ask ourselves, who is the creator of such perfection? What is the source of transcendence? And we conclude that a superior being shares his perfections with us. A creator shares his goodness, beauty, truth, and love with created beings. So our exercise of contemplation leads us on a path toward the creator. The fourth workshop presents several experiential exercises. One of them leads us to contemplate the Judeo-Christian Psalms, to live in God's presence in the diverse circumstances of our lives at different times of the day, as Jesus indicates in Luke 18:1. Pray always. Rosaries are used in many religious traditions to help us live in God's presence throughout the day. The fourth workshop invites us to another experiential learning, to rely on the contemplation to grasp the richness of Jewish and Christian liturgies, and then to live them in our daily lives, to give meaning to our lives, to give them structure, to give them unity, living in the presence of God. Contemplation leads us to build our relationship with God in our daily activities. We build our relationship with God when we work, create, and collaborate in His work of creation. When we build the same goodness, beauty, truth, and love that He had in mind when He created us. We build our relationship with God, encountering other people, loving them, creating communities, and performing social actions. In the fifth workshop, we experience how our contemplation helps us build relationships and community, creating a more human world. Phenomenology posits that every act of consciousness we perform is consciousness of something or of another. Consciousness makes us relational. Consciousness generates intersubjectivity, builds relationships, integrates families, couples, and friendships, and helps us break out of isolation. Each phenomenologist highlights how our consciousness leads us to build community. Our spirituality is a powerful force for humanizing society. In the sixth workshop, we experience how our contemplation enlightens our discernment, puts us in touch with our inner selves, and improves our decisions. What is discernment? John Kashan proposed an intuition of discernment based on values. How can we know if what a person offers us in an exchange of ideas or goods is valuable? To know whether to accept an idea that another person proposes to us, we must consider our values, the values of the other person, and the value of what we are exchanging. St. Ignatius of Loyola proposed another, much broader conception of discernment, which incorporates our interiority. Discernment arises from our spirituality, from our inner life. The workshop proposes an exercise in discernment based on the passage of a blind Bartimaeus. I imagine myself as blind Bartimaeus, on the ground, begging for alms, fallen, prostrate, overwhelmed by my limitations, vulnerable. I imagine Jesus passing by in my life. I see him and I am distressed that he is passing me by. So I cry out, Jesus, have mercy on me. I look into Jesus' eyes, see him lay his hands on me and heal me. I regain my sight and with it, my discernment. I decide to follow him on his path. St. Ignatius' discernment, as part of the spiritual exercises, helps us interpret whether our decisions lead us to a full or to an empty life. When we make a decision, we may feel good or bad. We may feel consolation or desolation. Consolation is an integrated feeling. It fills our soul. Desolation is disintegrating. It fills us with doubts, worries, and anxiety. However, it is not that simple. We can feel consolation even if we make a bad decision, and desolation even if we make a good decision. This is where the need to discern which decision is the right one arises, which implies understanding our emotionality. Several prestigious authors recommend using the Enneagram to help us in our discernment, to know whether our decisions lead to a fulfilling life or to destruction. The Enneagram helps us understand how we make decisions, discover our obstacle to discernment, and how to overcome them. In the seventh workshop, we experience how our contemplation strengthens the existential dimension of our spirituality and leadership, helping us discover the meaning of our lives, the driving force behind leadership. Suffering seems inevitable. A mother suffers during childbirth. Parents suffer for their children. We suffer when we work. Students suffer when they study. Athletes suffer when they train. Suffering is the price we pay for a better reality. Do you think suffering can have any meaning? The Epic of Gilgamesh and Buddhism show how our spirituality and contemplation help us to find meaning in suffering and transform it. For Jews and Christians, several passages in the Bible present suffering as part of a spiritual journey. There are several episodes in the New Testament that show the role of suffering for a higher purpose. Several Christian spiritual leaders propose different ways of finding meaning in suffering. Several modern authors have sought the meaning or ways to transform suffering. In the eighth workshop, we experience the transformational dimension of our spirituality and leadership, how our contemplation strengthens our power of transformation, the driving force behind leadership. For Eastern spiritualities, spiritual transformation is strengthened by contact with our inner selves. In many places, the Bible leads to personal and social transformation. The Sermon of the Mount is transformative. The Beatitudes express how spirituality leads us from suffering to happiness. Christian spirituality repeatedly emphasizes how our religiosity is transformative. In the ninth workshop, we experience how our contemplation strengthens our power of physical, emotional, and spiritual healing, the driving force behind leadership. Each dimension of our spirituality and leadership is healing: the cognitive dimension, the transcendental dimension, the axiological dimension, the religious dimension, the relational dimension, the dimension of our inner life as part of discernment, the existential dimension. There is scientific evidence of the positive effects of spirituality on health. There is scientific evidence of the positive effects of religion on health. In the last workshop, we experienced how our contemplation strengthens our capacity to carry out social actions, the driving force behind leadership. In multiple passages, the Bible reflects the centrality of love for our neighbors and the pursuit of the common good. Medieval Christianity promoted social action as a requirement of spirituality. For Christianity in the last century, spirituality and social action must go hand in hand. The two world wars created a new spirituality from below. Our inner selves lead us to become involved in the complexities of modern life. Modern spirituality is oriented toward the common good. The workshop shows two videos of two examples of lay people committed to social action and invites us to reflect on how our spirituality leads us to social action. There are countless social initiatives, but the question is, what would motivate us to get involved? This video shows how our spirituality is a driving force that leads us to promote the common good. This concludes this summary of the spirituality and leadership workshops. These workshops lead us to a question: how would our lives change, how would society change if we incorporated the practice of contemplation as a gateway to a life of greater spirituality and leadership? Thank you very much.